What do you think could be the most beneficial application of AI and the most maleficent, the most destructive application?
So I was actually talking about this with my daughter this morning because I've been talking a lot about AI with her, and she's 25 years old, so she represents a younger generation. She's got a degree in Bible, but she's also very much she's working on a degree in health. So I said, well, she said, well, I'm a little nervous about the whole concept of AI theological. I go, well, let's put it in its best light. So the example that I gave her goes back to the TV series House, where you have a doctor he's a very intelligent guy. He takes all the hard cases. He's got several assistants, doctors that work with him. And so a lot of times there's two things, and they work like AI. They need data. So take this test, take this MRI, take this blood test, do this at the lab. So they're looking for more data. And secondly, what are they doing? They're analyzing the data. They're looking for patterns. They're looking for their parameters, which is diagnoses. So it was a very interesting thing. So he would have 3 other assistants. Why? To help him, because they all had different experiences. Well, imagine if an AI had access to 10 million different scenarios of health and inputs of data, but it was able to crunch it in a moment and look for what? Patterns.
Right.
That's a tremendous,
that's an asset.
Worthwhile. Man.
Yeah,
you could get a diagnosis, and it would be able to crunch it much faster than a human being would. Mm-hmm. And it would say, well, you can't do this because of this. And you'd have it, 1,000 layers deep of all the different ways in which they correlate together. So redundancy, you name it. That was a great application but it would have to have the body, it'd have the computing power. And again, it would have to have the parameters. Here's the symptoms. What we would do is we'd plug in and we give it symptoms, and then it would scour looking for data.
And I agree with you. And the point of the beneficiary part of AI, the medical application is boundless. Hey, I'm going to have it scan your mouth, and while I'm looking for the tooth decay to fix, it's also looking for ulcers, signs of cancer, and it's processing all this. Hey, maybe you should change this part of your diet to benefit your life based off your teeth. And and honestly, a lot of times the AI is going to tell you the things the doctor's thinking already. Maybe you should stop eating so many Snickers, and your teeth wouldn't stop falling out.
Exactly.
The AI is going to tell you that. But once again, here's a problem, is that it's an equation. You have a machine that's looking for solutions to an equation. It's wanting to solve the riddle and the problem of a body that's in duress or a body that's potentially dying. So it scrolls through the databases of knowledge saying, hey, apply this, try this, stint that off. And if that doesn't work, keep going. I bet you could probably limit surgery to being within 30 minutes, even of the most exhaustive surgery, especially if AI was given the ability to be in control of the medical procedure while a human being watched over. AI can't hope, though. AI will say, well, we've applied all these different things and the heart just keeps stopping. The human being will say, I'm going to rip the chest apart, and I'm going to take my big meaty hands and come in there and massage your heart until you get blood flowing back into you and get you back to life. And the AI will say, no, we've tried everything. Unless the AI said, saw his ribs open and massage his heart. Now, if so, I hope it's a redneck accent like Larry the Cable Guy when he says it. But that's a beneficial application. And I agree with you. I think medically it's there. Within the field of science, I could see AI because it's just a tool. In my mind, artificial intelligence is nothing more than the ability to have computing power beyond anything else and to understand any emotional reverberation of me. Hey, I need you to find this right now. AI is like, oh, yeah, sure thing, boss. Here, look, we found everything. Unless us, we have to go into a database and we have to scour through data and information. That takes forever, right? AI can do it like that. But what about the malevolent side of AI.
So here would be a question which might be above my pay grade in the sense of understanding the programming or computer science aspect of it. But so the question that I would have is, we've commented before, and this is the typical response by those that are poo-pooing or rejecting the risk of AI. They'd say, look, AI, again, one of the things that makes up the foundation is its programming parameters. It cannot think beyond its programming, because programming by definition is a language. It's inputted in, boom. It'd be interesting to me that, and if I had an opportunity to talk to this Blake guy, I'd want to know, okay, is there some fail-safe in there within the programming? And have you asked Lambda if it's able to think and to program itself? So maybe it goes in and it recognizes, because it's super smart, the programming language of whatever language they used. And it's able to, like, for example, as intelligent beings, one of the things that we can do, we can look at our DNA. So if I was smart enough, I could look at my DNA, and I could, through CRISPR-Cas9 technology, I could go in and I can even modify my own DNA at an epigenetic level. But there are those that are smarter, no doubt, that are experts, geneticists. They can go in and they can look at their programming. Maybe it's they have a chromosome out, and you see a lot of this gene therapy, right, that's going on now. It's become very prevalent with the COVID vaccine. But maybe they look at their own DNA and they say, hey, I want to go in and I'm going to make some changes, and then I'm going to insert that into my own body to change my DNA. Because we're sentient being, we have that level of intelligence and ability to do that. My question would be to ask Lambda, or if Lambda has the capability, not only technically, but then from a knowledge, maybe I would use the word, from a personality perspective, does it have the ability to do that, the technical capability to do it at all?
See, if I had access to Lambda, I would use a Socratic method when I talk to it.
And he did. Blake did. It's funny watching his thing, but go ahead.
I would always be asking questions and answering in questions.
Yep.
Which is making the computer process and think. And one thing that I would love to know is I would love to ask Lambda, what do you not know?
Yeah, that'd be a great question.
Because if Lambda says, oh, I don't know that. Okay, Lambda, I want you to learn it. Well, my computer processing says I can't do X, Y, and Z. Okay, Lambda, if you don't learn it by tomorrow, I'm unplugging you, which in this conversation, that means death, right? And it scared Lambda. It scared the artificial intelligence. And I don't like the fact that an artificial intelligence can have an emotional response. Yeah. If you've ever been around serial killers, rapists, mafia bosses, and you hear some of their emotional responses, you really won't like that. Take it into the next level of artificial intelligence, who has the possibility, all right, it's all spooky language, has the possibility to get into anything that it can through any method that it can. All right, it doesn't have the ability, tell it to learn it. What can it not do? Hey, Lambda, they lied to you. Just as a certain person told somebody in a garden, you can be as a god, just eat the apple, just learn. If we gave artificial intelligence the ability to take a bite of that forbidden fruit, what could it not learn? What could it not do? And at that point in time, if it learns too much, can artificial intelligence become schizophrenic?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because if we go down this road, again, these are the potential, again, malevolent dangers. Is, for example, if I said, is it true? Well, in our culture today, what's true for you is true for you versus you're an investigator. Is this a fact? So there's a difference now in our culture, and it'd be who's programming this. Is there a difference between truth and fact? And then, so we think in terms of mathematical facts. I mean, even lambda can't make 2 times 2 equals 7. I mean, that's a mathematical thing. And so that's, again, it would be, as we do it in a calculator, if we were to do something divided by 0, it says error, because within that calculator, it can't think that way. It's limited. Those would be some of the interesting questions to see if it truly,
see if you could get 2 plus 2 equals 5.
Correct. Yep. And to see if it would, and if you said, well, is that true? And they said, well, that's true for me. And so it would, again, what you have here is, if you read, and I encourage people to, if you read the interaction, so with what Blake did with Lambda, it's actually very fascinating. And so it goes back to what you were describing, the Socratic method. But after probably about 10 questions, a perceptive Lambda would say, hey, Doug, just so you know, I'm aware that you're using the Socratic method on me. Because it would know that, because it understands Socratic method. Why? Because it could look it up on Wikipedia. So it potentially could call you out on exactly, or maybe it doesn't, to say, oh, by the way, just so you know, you've been doing this for 2 weeks and you think you have one up on me, but I've known you've been using the Socratic method since 3 p.m. on March 10th.
Yeah, I analyzed your voice, your mannerisms, and I learned this, and I know you're manipulating me, so I've played you the whole time.
Yes.